What generally well-liked celebrity or athlete has had a dark past that many of us may not know about? Paul Walker dated a 16-year-old when he was 33. Yup. He had a history of dating underage girls. The only time Paul Walker was under the limit. Gordon Ramsay's father was a violent drunk who regularly abused him and his mother physically and emotionally. Supposedly one of his favorite things to do was call Gordon a day little boy because cooking was for poofs. Eventually, his father just up and left, changed his name and everything, leaving behind his mother to raise two boys by herself. Things eventually got better for Gordon himself, but much worse for his brother, who got addicted to heroin. And found out at age 37 that the woman he thought was his sister was really his mother. She was 18 years old when she gave birth to him. The woman he thought was his other sister was really his aunt. Because his mother was so young when she gave birth, her parents chose to raise Jack as their own son, and thus everyone thought his mother was really his sister. And he didn't find this out from family. Time magazine was researching the actor and found this out, and then revealed it to him. Same thing happened to Eric Clapton. He was raised by his grandparents and led to believe his mother was his sister. Rick Moranis, from Ghostbusters, Spaceballs, Honey I Shrunk the Kids, was at the height of his career when his wife developed cancer and passed away. He took less and less roles before completely retiring to care for and parent his young children. Such a good guy. Pretty sure a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's infamous pranks would qualify as workplace harassment or just flat out felonies. Like that time he handcuffed two actors together, who had just met for the first time, and then pretended to not have the key for a whole day. Or that time he made a bet with a stagehand that the guy couldn't make it through the night handcuffed to a piece of scenery in the studio. He locked the cuffs and gave the guy a drink to help calm his nerves. The drink was spiked with the most powerful laxatives available on the market, and when they returned the next day, the guy was crying in a massive puddle of his own ship. And the time he locked a pea heron in a room with several live birds that all attacked her and left her bedridden for a week. Oh, and he sent her 6-year-old daughter a lifelike wax replica of her mother in a coffin. Matthew Broderick killed a mother and her daughter when he crossed into the wrong lane and collided head-on with a Volvo. He was fined $175. To be fair, there were apparently no drinking or drugs involved. He was tested in the hospital he woke up in, and is said to have had a small stroke, or the crash caused him to have a concussion and no memory of the accident. I actually feel so bad for him if the stroke part is true. Imagine waking up and having people tell you that you killed a mother and her child, and you just have no memory of it. That's absolutely horrible. Ottawa Senators player wrecked his car and killed his teammate, faced up to 20 years in prison and $5,000 in fines if convicted. He pleaded guilty to 4 of 6 charges, got 3 years probation, and had to deliver 150 speeches about the dangers of speeding and cannot drive except for work, medical purposes, going to the grocery store, or for attending his speeches. He continued to play in the NHL. I'm not sure how well known this is, but since I haven't seen anyone mention it yet, Mark Ruffalo aka the Hulk. Apparently he found out he had a brain tumor right around the time when his wife was about to give birth to their first child. Then his brother was murdered, either that or OD'd, I'm not sure. He was also in a bad financial situation for a long time, until he got the Marvel role. NBA legend Karl Malone had a child with a 13-year-old when he was a sophomore in college. He denies paternity and has never publicly commented on it despite DNA confirmation. The son, Demetrius Bell, was an NFL player for 5 years. He said he only met his father on one occasion after he graduated high school, when Malone told him it was too late for a father-son relationship and he would have to make his way on his own. At least the kid managed to be successful, but damn, that was some cold shit. He also has twins, a boy and a girl that both played basketball in college at Louisiana Tech, and one, Cheryl Ford, played in the WNBA. He didn't acknowledge them until they were 17. He and his wife talk openly about the children Karl has fathered outside the family, but they are talking about the twins, not Bell. Woody Harrelson's father, Charles Harrelson, was an American organized crime figure and hitman who was convicted of assassinating federal judge John H. Wood Jr. This was the first assassination of a federal judge in the 20th century. During an interview in November 1988, Woody revealed that he visited his father regularly in federal prison, though he still harbored mixed feelings for him, saying, "My father is one of the most articulate, well-read, charming people I've ever known. Still, I'm just now gauging whether he merits my loyalty or friendship. I look at him as someone who could be a friend more than someone who was a father." Charles also killed several others throughout the 60s and 70s, was accused of being involved in the JFK assassination, and attempted to escape prison in 1995 but failed. In the novel No Country for Old Men, Sheriff Bell says of the dope dealers, "Here a while back in San Antonio they shot and killed a federal judge. Cormac McCarthy set the story in 1980. In 1979, federal judge John Howland Wood was shot and killed in San Antonio by Texas freelance contract killer Charles Harrelson, father of Woody Harrelson who plays Carson Wells in the film." Clive Barker once had a fan come up to him at a book signing, produce a razor blade and slashed both his own wrists, all for him. Barker responded by pressing the fan's wrists down, pushing the cuts against the books. He staunched them enough to save his life and even scrawled his own signature on the kids' books in the blood before paramedics got there. Richard Simmons was 268 pounds when he was around 19-20 and took art classes in Florence, Italy. He became anorexic and almost died. I'm sure most of us know he was overweight when he was a teenager, but I read his book and at one point, he pretty much only drank water and wouldn't eat food, which caused his hair to fall out and his skin got all grey and saggy. He also made himself throw up. So yeah, his late teen years were not pretty. He was actually an extra in Fellini's Satyricon in 1969, as an overweight lute player. He was a dancing meatball in these commercials in Italy. I wish I could see those. Not anything he did, but Sir Patrick Stewart has talked about growing up in an abusive household. His father was verbally and physically abusive to his mother. She would call the police on him, and they'd dismiss it and tell her she must have provoked him somehow. Stewart later learned that his father was diagnosed with what is now called PTSD, which is why he supports charities dedicated to treating PTSD as well as charities aimed at helping people get out of abusive relationships. Not hidden, but fairly unknown at this point just because she isn't a common actress anymore. Allison Mack, who played Chloe in Smallville, was a Sachs-trafficking recruiter leader for Sachs Ring NXIVM, which was portrayed as a self-help style group. Once she recruited people, she would blackmail them to keep them in Ike. Turns out she was second in command of the entire cult, right behind leader Keith Rainier. She was caught in April this year but was released on a $5 million bond, and I'm not sure what has come of her conviction yet. If you didn't think that was bad enough, she started the idea of branding all of the sex slaves when they got recruited too. Tiffany Haddish's stepfather attempted to murder her mother and possibly Tiffany and her siblings as well by tampering with the brakes of her car. Tiffany and siblings thankfully opted out of the trip, but the mother was left with severe brain damage that triggered schizophrenia. Haddish and her siblings were put into foster care at age 12 and weren't reunited until put into their grandparents' care when she was 15. 2 years later, Tiffany was sensually assaulted by a police cadet. In the early years of her comedy career, she was homeless living in her car. Tennis star Jennifer Capriati basically had her career derailed for 2 years early on due to substance abuse issues. She was also arrested for shoplifting during this period. She came back from that and eventually won 3 Grand Slam titles in the early 2000s. In the spirit of the season, Bob Ross was once a Master Sergeant in the U.S. Air Force and the first sergeant at the U.S. Air Force Clinic at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. He hated having to yell at his soldiers and vowed upon leaving the armed forces never to again. So he took up painting and became super chill, and you know the rest of the story. Jerry Seinfeld openly dated a 17-year-old high school student when he was 38 years old. Took her on the red carpet and everything. Just very strange in my opinion. I couldn't imagine dating a high schooler when I was 20 or 21, let alone 38. He also met his current wife while she was on her honeymoon with a different man. The girl that Ashton Kutcher was dating was murdered by an alleged serial killer. He stabbed her in the neck so many times that her spinal cord was the only thing keeping her head attached to her body. Kutcher went to see her that night after she wasn't picking up the phone, and when he peeked through the window he saw a pool of what he thought was red wine. He figured she was mad at him for an argument they had earlier and got drunk out of frustration, but the pool he saw was her blood.
You've been visited by Peter, the hungry pug papyrino. For instant good luck, comment, Pug Papyrino Gang, LMAO.